really none of your business. It's none of my business.
Hello, bonsoir, falcha, and welcome to the Motivated Classroom August Spotlight. Today is day 16 of the interview spotlights, and today we're speaking about episode 13 with the wonderful and brilliant Joe Dale. Now, there's a few reasons I really want to talk about Joe's episode. One is because he was the first ever interviewee that I did as a remote interview. I'd done one beforehand with Sukaina, who was working in my school at the time, but that was live in the studio. And the other thing is Joe really helped me with all of the technology aspect of setting up these interviews, of editing the podcast, and the podcast would not be what it is today without Joe's help. So a huge Gurmila Mahagad thank you to Joe. If you don't know his work, do check out Joe's work. He is amazing. And the other thing that is fantastic about this is this was recorded back in 2020, just a few months after the first lockdown for COVID. And our conversation is focused all about technology, but it's crazy reading back on it, how far things have come in 4 years. Like, we didn't mention AI, obviously, it wasn't really a thing. There's loads of other things we didn't mention, and loads of the programs we did mention don't even exist anymore. Like, he talked a lot about Jamboard, and that's stopping at the end of this year. But he did still say some really interesting stuff, so please do go back and listen to it. But first, it's a big thank you to Joe. So I really liked what he said about just the tools online or in the classroom about motivating students. He said tools which motivate students, I think, are tools which allow for collaboration and creativity. For example, letting children express themselves, the joy of adding images, things like that. I think that's something that's very motivating because they like that control. There's the autonomy piece. And I think that can be scary for the teacher to relinquish some control. Just the ability for the children to be able to express themselves, to be listened to by the teacher, to collaborate with each other. It's something very motivating indeed. And he's right. And that goes for the online space just as much as in the classroom. And then I really like the piece that he mentioned about Google Earth, and that part is still relevant even 4 years later. And of course I spoke to the great Ben Tinsley about Map Talk and using Google Maps in order to give more input, and essentially that's what Joe did in his episode talking about it. So he says, I use the feature in Google Earth which I particularly like, which is the I'm feeling lucky option, which is like a dice face on the left hand side of the interface. So while you're recording your screen, we'd start off by looking at the whole globe and then click on the feeling lucky option. Essentially, you don't know where you're going to go in the world, so you can literally be going anywhere at all. And so you just sort of zoom into a certain area and then start to ask questions. I was suggesting to the people I've done this with, you could ask questions in the target language about things like, what can you see? Are we in a town? Are we in a rural environment? Can you see mountains? Can you see a river? You know, with simple, comprehensible input language. And then, of course, you can drag the little orange Pac-Man on the right side. And then, as I said, if it's available, you can use the street view. You can zoom in, go down to street level. And that means, again, you know, what's the weather like? What can we see? Are we in a town? How do you know? Where do you think we are? Whereabouts in the city? Are we in the countryside? Where do you think we're going? Where did we go before this? And you can look at the person in 360 in photo and street view. There's so many opportunities for inputs there. And if your middle schoolers are anything like mine, they absolutely love geography and flags and knowing where places are in capital cities and stuff. So I think this is a great exercise. So again, thank you so much to Joe for all your technological help. Please look up Joe and the wonderful work he does. Gurmila Magav, agus Slán Abhaile.